Welcome to another Threes and TDs. Today I'm going to talk about my childhood team, the sports franchise that I have probably spent more hours consuming content on, more content than I probably should know or do know, but it is the Carolina Panthers. I am so excited about this draft class. The direction that this team is taking with Dan Morgan, we have a plan. I know that draft grades don't really matter. Everybody has an opinion. All of the evaluators. I'm aware that none of them have played a snap of the NFL, but I am incredibly excited about the direction this team has taken. And I thought we could talk a little bit about maybe what some of the evaluators are saying, but just my own personal opinions on this draft class. Going into this draft class, especially with that first round pick at pick 8, there were two sections of our fan base. One of them wanted Tetorō McMillan from Arizona, who we ended up getting. The other one wanted an edge. I'll even be honest. I was part of that crowd that said we need edge help. We were historically bad against the run. Dan Morgan, during free agency, really addressed a lot of the needs in that interior defensive line. Now, it's not great. It's better. It's not fantastic, but I thought he addressed that. So I thought that we were going to go with Jaylen Walker. Jaylen Walker was more connected in all of these mock drafts than any other player. There were also reports of Mykel Williams, who ended up going to San Francisco at 11, but I thought it's going to be Jaylen or it's going to be Mykel. And Dan Morgan, as we kind of see, has a type, and the type, especially on the defense, is he likes SEC players, and he likes length. We'll talk about that in a second. There's a theme here with the kinds of things that Dan Morgan wants out of his football players. We went with Tetorō McMillan, and I talked a little bit about this before, but I really was pleased with how they kept this under wraps. Because last year, if you remember, what happened last year? Xavier Legette came out and essentially said, oh yeah, the Panthers are going to pick me if I'm there. Dave Canales told me. So there was no real kind of intrigue into what was happening. And now some might say, why do you need intrigue? Well, you need intrigue because if certain teams or certain GMs know that you're going to take a guy, they might want to jump you for that position. This year, all the messaging was Jaylen Walker, Jaylen Walker, Jaylen Walker, and they took Tech. I was surprised. I am very, very happy. I thought that the Tetorō McMillan evaluation as this went on was a little off. There are people that are way smarter than me that do this for a living. I mean, you have somebody at Yahoo like Nate Tice that had an evaluation on Tetorō McMillan that was third best in the class. And then you had somebody like Daniel Jeremiah, who's incredibly plugged in, that's like, oh yeah, there's teams that don't have an evaluation until 22, 23. Todd McShay, who is very good at his job, his big board, he had him as like the number 50 player, which to me is just bonkers. I thought there was a lot of depth on edge, even though I wanted us to go with a defensive player. In terms of the depth of this class, we heard two things. Edge was incredibly deep, and running back was incredibly deep, and interior defensive line was incredibly deep. We also knew that the wide receiver class wasn't super deep. And so if you can get a guy, an 6'4" guy that has a volleyball and basketball background, I heard this stat from Mina Kimes, which I thought was a really good stat. She said last year, Tetorō McMillan had more third down conversions for a first down than any other college football player with 0 drops. Last year, the Carolina Panthers didn't have one wide receiver in the top 45 who was top in third down conversions for first downs. This is a need for the Carolina Panthers. I thought Tetorō's best routes were dig routes or comeback routes. When Bryce kind of launches the ball, I think he's going to be a really good contested catch. The big knock on Tet was always that he can't separate. That might be true, but there's other players in our wide receiver room that can separate. I thought Jimmy Horn in the 7th round was really, really good for a different skill set. Hunter Renfrow was just signed. Last year, we find out that he had an autoimmune disorder that made him lose weight. If he can get back to any level of what he was 2 years ago. Anyways, these are all depth pieces. I'm not saying that they're going to start for us, but I'm incredibly encouraged. The other The other two players, so in the second round, Nick Scourton was picked. Trevor Etienne was the only pick that I was like, is this a reach? I thought that there were other running backs in that range that we could have gotten. But, I also thought that about Chuba Hubbard when Matt Rule picked him. And he's ended up being a great player for us. Lathan Ranson, the Ohio State safety, I thought that was a good pick for depth. I pulled up his highlight reels, and he can just hit people. And this is also something we're noticing. Evero wants to run a 3-4 scheme. When you run a 3-4 scheme, you want safeties to come up to the box and hit players. Well, he can hit players. Now, there's some liability on coverage, but he can come up to the box and make really good plays. I thought Mitchell Evans in the 6th round is really good. There's some evaluators that are saying that in a year and a half, he might be starting for us. I thought he was a really good pickup. This is by far, to me, the best draft that I can remember in my Carolina Panthers lifetime. Sure, 2003, there were some really good players we got there, but I, overall, am incredibly excited about the future of the Carolina Panthers. It's the first time since, I think, 2017, 2018, where, I'm a sicko. I consume content even when I know we suck, but there's a plan. Dan Morgan has a plan. Dave Canales has a plan. We made our wide receiver room better. We also got Nick Scourton, by the way, had a first-round grade for a lot of guys. And last year, at the beginning, when he was at Purdue last year, he was super, super good. He put on 30 pounds, went to Texas A&M, and had a different kind of year. I think there's a lot of potential there. So incredibly excited about the future of the Carolina Panthers. We'll see what happens. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.